Hello everyone and welcome to Royals at the Ranch for Thursday, May 26, 2022. In this episode, we're going to have some reminders about body language and the difference between good stress, tolerable stress, and toxic stress. And I was able to obtain just a little bit of footage of some snakes experiencing some tolerable stress. It's not easy for me to do because my snakes don't reach that level very often, but I hope it's helpful because I've had several people approach me and ask me how they can be sure that their snake is experiencing good stress or just tolerable stress. They want to make sure that their snake isn't approaching the red zone behaviors, that their snake isn't approaching that level of toxic stress. So we're going to go over that a little bit. We're going to see some Royals training. And then we're going to get to see some size comparisons of a few Royal pythons that are all the same age, but drastically different sizes. And then I'm also going to point out during the target training portion a behavior that I find is quite common in Royal pythons. They don't all do this, but enough of them do it that it makes me wonder what the purpose of this particular behavior is. And I think you'll recognize it when you see it, and we'll talk more about it during those videos. The important thing to remember is not all stress is bad. Without experiencing and overcoming challenges, snakes and other animals, including humans, would not learn, would not grow, and would not improve. There is good stress, which is when your snake or other animal may be aroused, excited, experiencing a challenging situation, or working to find resources. Remember our behavior chart from early in the series with the green, yellow, and red zone behaviors? Well, good stress would be when the snake's body language is in the green zone or just in between the green and yellow zone, perhaps just being stretched a little bit outside of their comfort zone, but they're doing okay. Good stress is beneficial in the long run and not distressing. Tolerable stress is distressing, but your snake is able to cope, recover, and move on, resulting in learning and growth. This would look like behaviors in the yellow zone. Toxic stress, on the other hand, is always bad. Toxic stress is distressing. The snake or other animal cannot cope and often does not recover. It can leave permanent psychological damage. Red zone behaviors would indicate that the snake is in the realm of toxic stress, and if the situation is not remedied immediately, if the snake is left in that red zone state, the stress reaches the level of toxic. Let's start by taking a look at a snake who is experiencing good stress. As you saw in the beginning of this video, Sarek was at his door and wanted out of his enclosure. What's going on here is he wants out of his enclosure to explore. He's just not sure he wants me to pick him up. So he's under a little bit of stress here because he's excited to come out of his enclosure and because I'm being a little bit intrusive by putting my hand up there. However, he's chosen to climb over my hand and wrap his tail around my hand so that he can anchor himself as a means to try to get down out of his enclosure and onto the floor or onto anything that's nearby. If you watch his body language, he isn't trying to escape or avoid. He's not being defensive. He's using me as an anchor. He's sniffing me, and he's just trying to decide his best way down because he wants to move on and roam. So this is an example of comfortable and relaxed behavior, but it's on the end of that green zone that would be approaching yellow zone. Now, this is definitely some yellow zone behavior that you're seeing here. Now, this snake, Mu Are, he did choose to come out. I didn't take him out. He had actually been out of his habitat for quite a while, and I had been working in the room just keeping an eye on him. But now I've come into the room and I'm focused on him, and it's making him a little bit nervous. Instead of me just ignoring him and going about my business and cleaning enclosures or whatever it was that I was doing, now I've walked over to him and I'm filming him, and that is making him a little bit nervous. So this is definitely yellow zone behavior, but I would still count it as good stress. He doesn't seem to be distressed. He's just being stretched a little bit outside of his comfort zone. Now watch here. This is where things change. That is distress. For those of you who are wondering how to recognize moderate versus severe stress or tolerable stress versus toxic, this is tolerable stress because what happened after his reaction was he relaxed right away and he moved on. He's still slightly nervous. He's kind of pushing his nose on the glass, and he, I think, is kind of trying to see if he can get underneath this enclosure. But that all didn't last long, and he actually ended up spending some time on this activity stand. This is a good point for us to transition into our size comparison talk. The reason I'm doing this is I have several snakes that were all hatched in September of 2021, and they are hugely disparate in their sizes. This is Buffy. She was produced at Rare Genetics Inc. by Benson Morrell and his partner. Next to her is Finnick, and she was produced by Bad Reptiles. They are the same age, just hatched only a few days apart. Finnick is 106 grams, and Buffy is 213 grams. I also want to point out here, since we've been talking about behavior, that Buffy is fairly comfortable and relaxed. I think she's experiencing some good stress exploring, but Finnick is in the yellow zone. She's moderately stressed, experiencing what I would call tolerable stress. She came out of her enclosure on her own, but then the longer she was out, the more fearful she became and the more she started to retreat into herself. Her body language told me that she was becoming fearful. She actually ended up balling up and striking out once. And so obviously I immediately ended that session and put her away. Now this is Buffy on the right and Mew RA on the left. And they were also just hatched a few days apart. All three of these snakes, Finnick, Buffy, and Mew RA, were all hatched in September of 2021, just a few days apart. Mew RA is 359 grams. And again, Buffy is 213 grams. And that dark snake, Finnick, was only 106 grams. They're all eating pretty much the same thing. They're all in very good body condition. They're healthy, they're active, they're alert. There's no issues with them eating. They all arrived different sizes, and I maintain them with the same routine here. They're not treated differently by me, and so they're just growing differently. And I'm finding that there's a huge amount of variability within the population of Python Regis that I have here under captive management as far as their sizes go. Some seem to be really, really big, and then others that are the same age seem to be on the small side, and I have some that are in the middle. And so I see not only a great amount of variability in their temperaments and behavior, I also see a lot of variability in their sizes. If you haven't already recognized him, this is Boba Fett, and he was also hatched in September of 2021, right around the time of the others that you've already seen, and he's 161 grams. I'm not worried about the big variability in sizes in the population that I keep here. They're all healthy, they're all active, they're all alert, they're all in very good body condition, and so I think there's just a lot of variability in their sizes based on perhaps how they were raised after hatching and their individual genetics. I also want to point out that in this video, Boba Fett is a perfect example of comfortable and relaxed body language. He's experiencing good stress. He's choosing to come out of his enclosure and interact with me and explore. Now we're going to switch gears and look at some target training, and we're going to start out with this corn snake. Why am I showing a corn snake in a video about royals? It's because the corn snakes are the second most popular snake in the world. They're the second most kept pet snake in the world. And I just thought it was interesting to see the difference between that corn snake's behavior when doing target training and these royals' behavior when doing target training. This is Buffy, and she's just had a few target training sessions. She oriented to the target right away. She strikes at it several times before she actually grabs it and takes it. And this is one of the behaviors that I have found very interesting with royals, because she isn't the only one that does this. It's as if they miss the prey the first strike or two and then finally get it. I'm not sure why. Now let's take a look at Mew RA. This is only his second target training session. Just a few minutes before this, he had been out and on his perches and pushing his nose at the top of his enclosure, but by the time I got back, he had started to go in that log, and I think I startled him. But he's an example of what would be considered tolerable stress and not toxic, because he recovered very, very quickly. He stuck his nose right back out and started tongue flicking even before I presented the food to him again. So for those of you who are a little bit confused about what the difference is between tolerable and toxic stress, or the body language related to that, if the snake is distressed suddenly, but they're recovering quickly and going back to normal behavior or engaging in some type of new behavior that's not body language indicating distress, then that stress was tolerable. If they don't recover quickly, and if they become more and more frightened, then that could be on the verge of toxic stress, and you want to stop whatever's happening and get the snake back to a safe place where they can be comfortable and relaxed. This is Amunet. Nothing too exciting to see here, even though she's one of the royals I've had the very longest. She hasn't really progressed very far in her target training, and she and Amun sometimes do that behavior that I mentioned before with Buffy, where they strike at the food several times before they actually grab it and wrap it. And Amun just perplexed me tonight, because he saw me with the target and the food and setting up the camera, and he was already coming out of his enclosure. But then when I presented the target to him to do an actual formal training session, he just kept staring at me. Finally, when he did engage with the target and I deliver the reinforcement, he very deliberately pauses and moves to the side of it and approaches that prey item from the side and grabs it from the side, which makes me wonder if that's not part of their natural history, their natural behavior in the wild when they hunt. I'm wondering if, because the prey runs in front of them, if they're trying to anticipate where the prey is going to be in a few seconds, and so they strike ahead of it, or if as it's running by in the wild, they would tend to just by accident grab it in the abdomen. I'm not sure why they do that, but it does perplex me. This is Feather, and she is going through that stage in between when she associates the target with food and understands that she has to interact with the target in some way to earn reinforcement. She saw the target, knew it meant food, and then just started looking for the food. So she made me work a little bit to make sure that she actually showed some engagement with the target before I presented her with her food reinforcement. Next up, we've got Mesmer, and I'm really proud of him. He's interacted with this bird perch a few times. I think this is the third time that he's seen it sitting here in front of his enclosure. And the first two times I just opened his enclosure doors and left the perch there while I worked at my desk. And I let him investigate it as he pleased. Tonight I decided I would try to target him towards it. He got very excited, I think, combining the two activities. He knew the target meant food, and he lunged at it, striking. There are several options of how you can fix that behavior if it becomes routine. I don't think with him it will become routine. I decided just to pause and wait and give him some time to relax and think. And I'm watching his body language very closely. And there's a point where I see it relax. I see his body, which was kind of hovering above that rock, come down to rest on the rock. I see his muscles relax. I see him tongue flicking more, and I see his head move slightly forward. And so I just decided I would wait and give him an opportunity to assess the situation and see if he wanted to investigate that target or not. Something that he does here in just a minute is it dawns on him the target means food, but that the food isn't coming from the target, and he looks off to the side. That's okay. Some of them go through this stage where they understand that suddenly, and so they start looking for the food. And I give him a few seconds to do that and see if he re-engages with the target before I present him with the reinforcement. But because he is such a special case in how reactive he usually is and how fearful he's been over the last year, he's come so far in the last few weeks that I'm going very, very slowly with this session and being patient. And then I'm slow about the manner that I offer him the food. And he strikes at it several times too, just like Moon did and just like Buffy did, before he actually grabs it and wraps it. This doesn't look to me like defensive behavior or fear behavior. It looks like he's just hesitant about eating. This is Gunji. Gunji has had about a half a dozen target training sessions, and he's kind of a middle of the road royal. He's not super fearful, but he's not super bold. He kind of just rolls with the punches and goes with the flow. He understands the target training, and I haven't had him miss the prey, so good for him. I thought we'd finish up by looking at this king snake and how she targets and how different that is from the royals, how she engages with that target immediately. She follows the target everywhere that I'm moving that target to, and then when the food's there, she wastes no time striking it and wrapping it along with my feeding tongs. That's a good opportunity for me to introduce a little bit of touch with her as I put her away. Well, putting Vihari away brings us to putting this episode away. Thanks for sticking with me through another episode of Royals at the Ranch. Thanks for your interest, as usual, in animal training and behavior. I hope that this has been a good review for those of you who have seen my other videos about good stress, tolerable stress, and toxic stress, and that you have a little bit clearer idea of how to differentiate between those. And it was also a good time to review that body language chart between the green zone, yellow zone, and red zones. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, please remember to always be kind and love your animals.